ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। श्रीमद् भगवद गीता साधका संजीवनी थर्ड चैप्टर कर्मा योगा इंट्रोडक्शन। It is a fact that a hearer can't understand what a preacher preaches if he is already full of prejudices. That is why Arjuna could not have a thorough grasp of the topic explained to him by Lord Krishna. He could not make out the real meaning of Lord Krishna's words. They appeared to him to be ambiguous and confusing. So Arjuna puts the question to Lord Krishna in the next verses in order to get his doubt cleared. Verses 1 to 8. Necessity of the performance of duty being free from attachment from the viewpoint of the discipline of knowledge and action. Verses 1 and 2. Arjuna Vacha Jyayasi Chet Karmanasте Mata Bodhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojayasi Keshva Vyami Shrene Vakyena Bodhi Mahayasi Vame तद एकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहम् अपनुयाम्. Arjuna said, if you think that knowledge is superior to action, O Janardana, Krishna, why then do you urge me to do this savage deed? O Kesava, Krishna, with an apparently confused utterance, you seem to bewilder my mind. Therefore, tell me definitely the one principle by which I may attain the highest good or bliss. Comment. It is a common human weakness that he puts queries to others with a view to getting a response which would support his own views. It is cowardice because valor consists in carrying out the instructions of the preacher whether they are favorable or hostile. It is because of this weakness or cowardice that he experiences difficulty in unfavorable circumstances. When he finds himself unable to face the unfavorable circumstances, he disguises himself as a good man. That is, the evil disguises itself as a virtue. It is very difficult to renounce this sort of evil. In the case of Arjuna also, the evil of the renunciation of his duty has disguised itself as a virtue of non-violence. So, he regards knowledge as superior to action and asks Lord Krishna why he urges him to do the savage deed of fighting. A striver can receive the correct answer to his question only if he puts it with faith and reverence. Arjuna has full faith in Lord Krishna and holds him in reverence. Therefore, his question shows that he is even prepared to perform the savage deed of fighting in order to attain salvation. Arjuna requests Lord Krishna to tell him decisively one principle either of action or of knowledge by which he may attain the highest good or bliss. Arjuna is repeating the same request which he had already mentioned. Tell me decisively what is good for me. Now, the Lord in the next three, third, fourth and fifth verses answers the questions put in the first two verses. Verse 3. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Yoke Asmin Dvivedha Nishtha Pura Prokta Maya Nagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. The Blessed Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, in this world a twofold path has been enunciated by me before, the path of knowledge for men of renunciation, Sankhya Yogi, and the path of action for men of action, Karma Yogi. Comment. Here, Lord Krishna has mentioned two disciplines, the discipline of Sankhya, knowledge, and the discipline of Yoga, action. Corresponding to the two types of disciplines, there are two types of Purushas in this world. They are the perishable, mortal world and the imperishable, immortal self. To remain equanimous in success and failure, gain and loss, of the perishable is known as the discipline of action, while having a disinclination for the perishable and being established in the imperishable is the discipline of knowledge. But above these two, there is the Supreme Person who is beyond the perishable and is superior to the imperishable as described in the scripture and the Veda. Thus, wholehearted surrender to the Lord is called the discipline of devotion. Therefore, in the discipline of action, there is predominance of the perishable. In the discipline of knowledge, there is predominance of the imperishable, while in the discipline of devotion, there is predominance of God, Supreme Person. Verse 4. Na karmanam anarambhan nishkarmayam purusho ashnute nacha sanyasanad eva siddhim samadhi gachti. Not by non-performance of actions does a man attain actionlessness, nor by mere renunciation does he attain perfection. Comment. In the discipline of action, performance of action is inevitable because for the sage who wishes to attain yoga, action is said to be the means. A man has an impetus for action which can be pacified by the performance of actions without having any desire for fruits. If a striver performs actions having a desire for fruits, this impetus is not pacified, it is rather enhanced. Such actions don't bear fruit in the same way as the roasted or the boiled seed loses its power to sprout. Such actions lose their power of involving a man in the bondage of birth and death. A man can renounce the desire when he performs actions only for the welfare of others because actions have affinity for the world while the affinity of the self is for God. So long as he performs actions for himself, he can't renounce desire, and as long as he does not renounce desire, he can't attain to the state of actionlessness. The Gita teaches a man how to attain spiritual perfection by performing one's duty. It inspires him to perform actions rather than to renounce them. So the Lord lays emphasis on performing actions in both the disciplines of action and knowledge. The Lord urges people to perform actions rather than to renounce them. But the Lord asks them to renounce desire and attachment, which are the poisonous elements in actions. A striver, instead of renouncing the performance of actions, should renounce his attachment to them. Yogis, men of action, having abundant attachment, perform actions only by the body, mind, intellect, or merely by the senses in order to render service to the world without any selfish motive. In the discipline of knowledge, there is predominance of the discrimination between the real and the unreal. Therefore, a Gyan Yogi assumes that it is the modes which are acting on the modes. That is, all the actions are performed by the body, senses, mind, and intellect, etc., while he does nothing at all. Verse 5. Nahi kaschit kshanam api jatu tishtaya karma kret karyate heya avasaha karma sarvaha prakriti cher gun hai. For no one can remain even for a moment without performing action. Everyone is made to act helplessly by the impulses born of nature. Comment. In the disciplines of action, knowledge, and devotion, no striver can ever remain without performing actions. Though a wise man has no relation with his so-called body, yet actions are constantly performed by it. He has to act helplessly by the impulses born of nature. Nature is kaleidoscopic. A striver has to do nothing for himself. He has to perform actions sanctioned by the scriptures for the welfare of others. So far as forbidden actions are concerned, they can't be performed by the striver because his aim is God realization. Many people regard only those actions as actions which are performed by the gross body. But according to the Gita, The activities undertaken by the body, speech, or mind are also regarded as actions. Only those actions, whether physical or mental, to which a man is attached, lead him to bondage. Generally, people regard their professions such as business, service, or teaching and nursing of children, etc., as actions, but they don't consider eating, drinking, sleeping, waking, and thinking, etc., actions. So, when they renounce their profession, they think that they are not performing actions, but it is an error on their part. All the activities performed by the physical body for the purpose of earning a living, actions performed by the subtle body like sleeping and thinking, and trance performed by the causal body are all regarded as actions. So long as a man has egoistic notion and attachment to the body, the activities performed by the body are actions, because the body is the evolute of nature and nature is never inactive. So, a person having egoism and attachment to the body can't remain without performing action in either of the states, either of activity or repose. Individual nature is molded by tendencies, and tendencies are born of modes, and modes in their turn evolve from Prakriti. Therefore, to be subjected to nature or modes or Prakriti is one and the same thing. As a matter of fact, subjection of the Prakriti and its evolutes is the root cause of each and every subjection. The same subjection on different occasions has been defined as subjection to time, nature, action, and Prakriti, etc. So long as the self, soul, does not become free from nature and its modes, that is, does not realize God, it remains helpless under the control of modes, time, nature, pleasures, and even persons, property, etc. But when it transcends the modes of nature and realizes the self or God, it does not remain helpless. It attains freedom, which is axiomatic, something noteworthy. There are two states of Prakriti: active, gross, and inactive, subtle. Performance of action is the active state, while remaining idle in sleep, etc., is the inactive state. But even in the inactive state, nature does not remain inactive, but activity goes on in its subtle form. When a person is awakened by someone, he says that he has aroused in half sleep. It proves that the process of sleep continued even in the inactive state. In the same way, the activity continues in trance, dissolution, and final dissolution, etc., in its subtle form. In fact, nature never remains inactive because it is kaleidoscopic. In the self, spirit, or soul, there is no doership, but having assumed its affinity for bodies, etc., the evolute of nature, it becomes helpless under the control of nature. It is because of its helplessness that it, being a non doer, assumes itself as the doer. All the actions of the universe, such as seeing, hearing, breathing, digestion of food, etc., are performed by nature. So is the case with the states of childhood and youth. But the embodied soul is bound by regarding itself as the doer of some actions. In the preceding verse, it has been mentioned that no one can remain even for a moment without performing action. To this, one may raise the objection that a person can regard himself as free from action by forcibly suspending the functions of the senses. The answer comes in the next verse. Verse 6. कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य या आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते. He who, restraining the organs of action, sits thinking of the sense objects in mind, he of deluded understanding is said to be a hypocrite. Comment. The man of deluded understanding, that is, who can't distinguish the real from the unreal, restrains the senses forcibly from running after sense objects, but thinks of the objects of enjoyment with his mind and assumes this state as actionless, Such a person is called a hypocrite. Renunciation of actions is not true renunciation. Therefore, in the next verse, he explains the mark of real renunciation. Verse 7. Yastva indriyani manasa niyamyarabhate arjuna karme indriyaha karma yogam asaktaha sa vishishyate. But he who controlling the senses by the mind, O Arjuna, engages himself in the path of action with all the organs of action and sense without attachment is superior. Comment. Controlling the senses by the mind means that by applying discrimination, a striver should realize that the self has no affinity for senses and mind. When the senses are controlled by the mind, they can be engaged in or deviated from any activity as the striver wishes. Senses are controlled only when attachment to them is renounced totally. A man is attached to number one, actions, and two, their fruit. It is attachment and not actions or their fruit that is the root of all evils. Attachment is the main stumbling block to perfection. So, a striver, instead of renouncing actions, should renounce attachment. He can be free from attachment when he, without regarding the body, senses, mind, and intellect as his or for him, starts performing his duty promptly for the welfare of the world by considering them the worlds and for the world. By doing so, his attachment to the fruit of actions automatically perishes. When an action is performed for the welfare of others without any selfish motive, it is called karma yoga or the discipline path of action. When a person performs actions for himself, he is attached to the actions and their fruit. But when he performs them for others, the actions and their fruit are related to others while he is related to God. That is, he realizes his real relation with God, which is eternal. Thus, performance of one's duty according to one's caste and circumstances, etc., selflessly is the beginning of karma yoga, discipline of action. Strivers following the discipline of action are of two types. One, those who are interested in performing actions, but their main aim is to attain salvation. Such strivers need not start new actions. They have to make proper use of the available circumstances. Second, those who are interested in rendering service to others, in providing comfort to others, and in improving the society than in attainment of salvation. Such strivers can start performing new actions with the aim of doing away with their attachment. In response to Arjuna's question why the Lord was urging him to such a dreadful action as warfare, he replied, no one can ever remain even for a moment without performing action. Then he explained that he who, restraining the organs of action, thinks of the sense objects is a hypocrite, while he who engages himself in action without expecting any reward is superior. Now, in the next verse, he orders Arjuna to perform his allotted duty. Verse 8. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jyayo heya karmanaha shrirayatra api chate na prasidhed akarmanaha. Do thou perform thy allotted duty, for action is superior to inaction, and even the maintenance of the body would not be possible for thee by inaction. Comment. A man is permitted to perform two types of actions, those as laid down in the scriptures, such as fast and worship, etc., and the allotted duty according to one's caste, order of life, nature, and circumstance, such as eating food, doing business, construction of a house, and guiding a person who has lost his way, and so on. A man can't perform all the actions as laid down in the scriptures thoroughly, but he can very easily abandon the forbidden actions. Non-performance of prescribed actions is not very harmful, but abandonment of forbidden actions such as falsehood, theft, and violence, etc., is very beneficial. When he abandons the forbidden actions, the actions sanctioned by the scriptures are automatically performed by him. In the discipline of action, an action according to one's caste and sanctioned by the scriptures is one's allotted duty, whether it is terrible or mild. A vital fact pertaining to spiritual discipline. The striver who wants to attain bliss easily and quickly is a pleasure seeker rather than a striver, because by doing so, he has an eye not on the spiritual discipline but on its fruit. The result is that he gets tired of the spiritual discipline and thus attains his aim late. The striver who has a single minded determination to attain bliss is bent upon practicing the spiritual discipline wholeheartedly without thinking of the difficulties and duration, pleasure and pain. Not to talk of a striver, even a greedy merchant bears all hardships without caring for hunger and thirst, etc., as long as customers continue to come and there is a good sale. Similarly, a striver practices spiritual discipline with reverence and devotion without caring for comfort and even the bare necessities of life. He has a keen desire to attain his aim. He wails if he finds himself unable to overcome any obstacle in the path of the spiritual discipline, while the striver who derives pleasure out of the spiritual discipline gets angry when he finds an obstacle in his way. The curiosity or desire of the former striver enhances every moment, while the latter thinks of relaxing, having attained the aim quickly. The former thinks that he has nothing to do except practicing the spiritual discipline under all circumstances. So he applies his full power and attains bliss. But the latter, when he does not succeed quickly, may get disappointed. Therefore, a striver should attach more importance to the means rather than to the end. Like goddess Parvati, who in the Ramcharitmanasa declares, I have a firm determination that I shall marry only Lord Shiva, otherwise I shall remain unmarried even though millions of births may pass. I shall not disobey the preaching of sage Narada, even if Lord Shiva may ask me to do so 100 times. Mother Parvati is not time conscious in her penance. In this verse, Lord Krishna through Arjuna urges all strivers to perform their allotted duties very promptly by renouncing the desire for favorable circumstances and pleasures, which are the main stumbling blocks to spiritual progress. Om Tat Sat. All glories to Sri Partha Sarthi, Lord Shri Krishna. All glories to Bhagavad Vani, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Sri Hari Arpanamastu.